I'm Trish Toby with WARC reporting to you live from Westchester, New York, where there appears to be some sort of mutant menace on the loose.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Aucamp.
And I'm Pat Reber.
And we are the Mutant Menace.
I thought I was saying it first.
Oh, okay, you can say it first.
Hey, I'm Pat Reber.
And I'm Matt Aucamp.
And welcome to Mutant Menace. Yours was better. What's going on, Matt?
Not too much. I got a new teapot.
Ooh.
And I've been there's nothing that interesting. Like, I don't have I wish I had a nice, funny observation about owning a teapot. I've had a tea kettle for a long time. But never a teapot.
Nice. It's a step up.
How about you? What's new with
you? Playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, what's that?
It's like a tabletop role-playing game. You know your graphic adventure games?
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine that, but in your imagination.
Whoa. So you've been playing pretend?
Yes, yeah, playing pretend with my friends.
We haven't talked about it on the show, but me and you actually are part of a D&D podcast called Adventure Services.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Run by, his name was Dusk.
Is it was? I thought it was is. How is he still releasing music then?
I hope he's thrilled at the mention.
Okay, so you run your own session.
Yes, I do. I DM a campaign for a handful of honestly talented comedians.
Well, excuse me.
And I'm trying to design this campaign from scratch, and I named a nearby town Stars Hollow. And as I named it, I thought to myself, boy, that sounds familiar, but probably just because I just invented such a natural sounding name. Introduced it to my players, who it turns out are all huge Gilmore Girl fans. A show I've seen maybe a total of 5 episodes. So now I'm forced to find a way to sneak Gilmore Girls Easter eggs into my campaign.
Right. If you, listener, don't know what Stars Hollow is, it is the town in which Gilmore Girls takes place. And it is important enough to the show. Like, it is, you know, that pretentious thing that screenwriters or like writers sometimes say, like, oh, the town or the city is another character in the story. It's one of those.
Yeah. This is New York City and Sex in the City. It is
Baltimore and The Wire.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you know, I know I've watched all of Gilmore Girls multiple times, and I've played a very lot of D&D. So don't worry, Pat. I can help you out. You can make them. They can visit Luke's Tavern, and you can spell Luke with like a Q, Luq.
Oh, that's very clever.
They can. That's all I have. All right. That's enough.
That's farther than I got. I think I'm just going to kill off the Gilmore Girls.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, actually, to put our cards on the table, we talked about this. I love the idea of there being like a famous Gilmore Girls murder. Like the town's in trauma because of the murder of the Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
Like Taylor Dosey was like tyrant style locking the town down to find out who killed the Gilmore Girls.
Is that good or bad? Is Taylor Dosey?
You know, he's complicated. He's a complicated man.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I've got going on. That's the most exciting thing in my life at this time.
I was also sick. I also spent the last like week and a half getting over some sort of, I don't even know what it was. It was actually after a night that we played D&D, and I took off my headphones. I stood up from the computer. Like I felt fine. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And it just like rushed into my fucking body.
Ugh.
And I had to take like a day and a half off work, and then I've been so if listeners, if I sound a little different, it's because I'm still I'm still muting the mic to cough every few seconds.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly. What are we talking about today, Pat?
Let's go, bub.
I mean, we can start by talking about X-Men issue 13, Where Walks the Juggernaut?
Should we do a little recap of what happened last episode?
I should say Stan Lee has already done that for us.
Oh my god. Okay. All right, let's hear it.
To quote Stan Lee, last issue, we saw how Cain Marko, the sinister stepbrother of Professor X, stumbled onto the long-lost temple of Sitrak during the Korean War, daring to touch the forbidden ruby, thereby transforming himself into a human juggernaut. And now, obsessed with a burning desire to destroy his stepbrother, he has found Professor X at last.
Ah!
What is that when they do 3 dots, the ellipses, followed by an
Ellipses,
exclamation point at the end of a sentence? How do you read that?
Is that an interrobang, or is that a question mark and an exclamation point together?
I don't know.
How do I read it? I read it like, he has found Professor X at last.
Oh. All right. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Or you could do this. You could go, he found Professor X at last.
See, that's how it appears visually to me. The first one sounds a lot better.
In fact, they do it in the first panel on the next page too. Slowly recover from the staggering impact and relentless attack. Oh my god, they do it over and over. Then Professor X, laying on the ground, says, I still have a weapon, the supreme weapon.
Okay. Confirmed.
Okay, I think, well, yeah, the more we add it, the more I think it's definitely true. Later, Juggernaut says, everything must give way to the Juggernaut's attack, even a solid wall of earth. And then 2 panels later, he says, he'll get his answer in exactly 2 seconds. Okay, so tell me what happens in this issue.
All right, so we open with that Stan Lee recap as Juggernaut stands menacingly over Professor X while the professor asks the beaten X-Men to stay back and let him deal with it. Professor attempts to hit him with his mutant brain. Juggernaut reels for a moment, but reveals that Sidorak also gave him a psionic helmet. The professor needs a new gadget that will increase his mental powers. He asks the X-Men to hold them off, and Scott blasts a hole under Juggernaut to bury him in the ground, understanding that will only delay him and won't fully stop him. The professor puts on what he calls his Mento helmet and needs to discharge some mental energy. This is a device that will increase his brain power, but I guess it's overcharged right now. So he needs to release it, sending brain waves out into New York City. Meanwhile, the Juggernaut tunnels out of the trap unfazed by Cyclops' eye beams and is too fast for the Angel and is able to catch him. Down the hall, the professor's mental waves reach out for a few Marvel cameos. Meanwhile, the professor sends Hank and Bobby to help distract Juggernaut. Professor X makes contact with Johnny Storm, who shakes him off as a potential trap. Bobby and Hank shoot down the hall and are able to occupy Juggernaut after he takes out Cyclops and Angel. Bobby is taken out by the explosion of the ice cube he's trying to keep Juggernaut in. Hank very cleverly is able to trap Juggernaut in the danger room, but eventually loses the fight and gets knocked out when a 5-ton block of steel gets shot at him. The professor convinces Johnny to come help after getting in touch with him a second time. He and the X-Men are able to work together to distract the Juggernaut and daze him long enough for Angel to swoop in, grab his helmet off his head. Professor X then mentally cripples him, unclear how, but defeats the Juggernaut, then erases Johnny's memory of the whole incident and sends him back home to the Baxter building. The X-Men recover in little beds all next to each other while the professor and Jean tend to them. And that is the end of this Juggernaut saga.
He loves to wipe people's memories.
He
It's like his
does.
favorite thing to do.
One of my notes here immediately is that he's acting like an alpha and not like somebody that would call himself an alpha at the very
Right.
end. Earlier in the issue, he's just pointing at people and saying, injure him. He's pointing at Juggernaut specifically, but his command is, injure him. And then he humiliates Juggernaut at the end, and then immediately is just like, great job, Johnny. I'm going to erase your memory, idiot. And then he does it, and Johnny goes home like an idiot. He just gets back to the building like, wonder where I've been all this time.
And Professor X then tells the X-Men they're going to have to clean up the mansion. Like,
that was a good zinger.
But it's his fault. He's the one who trapped his brother in an ancient temple and then fled, and then like his chickens are coming home to roost, and now he's like, I need you guys to clean up all these feathers. Bye.
He's being so kind and fatherly to them as they recover in their little twin beds. And he says, now recover quickly, my X-Men, because once you're recovered, I have a gift for you. And they all say, oh boy, a gift. What is it, Professor? And he says, a broom. This place is a mess. And that's the end of the issue.
He gives them 2 middle fingers and wheels away.
If it were a TV show, it would condense into a small circle until it disappeared.
And he'd wink at us. And I mean, like, that is what the panel looks like. He looks like he's about to wink at us. Now, speaking of, his eyes are beautiful, because this is a new artist.
Ooh.
We still have layouts by Jack Kirby. I'm not... I think we can kind of assume what that means at this time, but I'm not entirely sure how... It's hard to tell how much artists relied on layouts in this era. It's also hard to tell when Marvel's being honest or when it's just trying to attach a name to a book.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
The penciler is a guy going by the name of Jay Gavin. Do you know who that is?
No, is that not his real name?
No, it's Werner Roth.
Okay.
You might not know that person, but what made him legendary basically was his run on the X-Men, because he's just really good. He was at the time working for DC, who did not like their artists to work for both companies. So he worked for Marvel under the name Jay Gavin. So yeah, this is Werner Roth, who will draw the X-Men for I think like 20 issues or something.
Speaking of, holy shit, are the X-Men good now?
You mean like as a comic or as superheroes?
As a comic, for this run that we go through on this episode, these are like exciting, engaging issues.
Mm-hmm.
They're stories and even some dialogue that would hold up as a modern comic.
Some, yeah. I mean, yeah, the fight here is like, and I think this is partly due to Werner Roth's art, is really good. It looks like visceral. Like you have Scott on the ground as Juggernaut is advancing on him. He looks vulnerable. He looks like he's about to get fucking stomped, and he's blasting at the Juggernaut, and like Juggernaut is just not budging. Later, there's the fight between Juggernaut and the Beast is just really physical. In the Kirby era, at least of this comic, there would be like one punch and that would be a fight. There's like a punch and then a bunch of people jumping around or like a bunch of weird gadgets being used. But this is like Juggernaut grabbing Beast by the foot and slamming him on the ground, and like Beast getting his legs broken and crawling to the button to trap Juggernaut in the danger room. It's really, again, kind of, there's a point where Beast gets clonked on the head by a like big metal, what would you call this thing? Just like a cylinder.
Yes.
And it's
a 5-ton metal cylinder.
And when you read that thud, you like feel it, you know?
Yeah. And that's through the whole issue. The action is really, I think you said visceral earlier. That's a really good word for it. But the exposition too, it's very complimentary because the art has taken a step up in showing the action that's taking place.
I do want to talk about what's ridiculous here, though. First of all, again, Professor X invents a machine in 10 minutes, which, yeah, what does it do? It siphons all his extra brain waves off so that he can be a stronger telepath. That doesn't make sense.
Well, there's
No, please tell me about the science here.
No, you're right that doesn't make sense. What makes even less sense to me is if he has a device that he's going to use to somehow charge up his mental powers, why does he need to discharge his mental powers?
Well, that's what I'm saying. What is he doing with this? He says it's to discharge his mental powers, but he also says it's to charge them up. I don't understand what's happening. He's like, oh, this is going to charge up my mental powers so much that I have to I have to siphon off some of the extra energy. Well, then just turn it down. Just don't turn the device up that high.
I think it's the trade-off for the better storytelling and action that we get in the next few issues is that Professor X becomes even
less coherent. Right, yeah. There's also a lot of geometry in this, right? Like you mentioned before, Cyclops shoots a hole beneath Juggernaut's feet. Then Juggernaut starts like making handholds in the side of the hole to climb his way up. At one point, he dodges Cyclops' bursts by tunneling sideways like a game of Dig Dug, which is kind of cute, but also completely not how digging or or the geometry of dirt works.
I don't know. He's I mean, have you ever played Dig Dug? It seems like it would work.
I've played Dig Dug, but I've never read any scientific papers about Dig Dug. So maybe I should do my fucking research before I go spouting my mouth off.
Yeah.
And then I'm also unclear, maybe you can tell me, why does he need Human Torch at all?
Flight. It seems like the answer is a second person that can fly. We need one person to fly and distract him so the other person can fly in and remove his helmet.
But he also has angels fly around him over and over and over to make him dizzy before he pulls the helmet off. It seems like obviously they just wanted a cameo. And I have a feeling that Kirby and Roth came up with this idea of Human Torch hearing Professor X's summons without themselves coming up with like a reason for it, and Stan Lee is just like sitting there with these pages going, what the fuck is going on here? And then has to come up with some justification.
Yeah, that's very possible. I think that it is probably a lot of Jack Kirby wanting to include the Human Torch, one of his absolute favorite all-time characters.
He also blinds the Juggernaut for like a second, which is a vulnerability the Juggernaut has. Dazzler does it to him a couple times. Like, blinding him seems to be a good strategy sometimes.
Yeah, he's got eyes.
Tell me how Juggernaut's powers work.
He can always move forward. That is the... Which, it begs the question, why not attack him from behind?
Well, also, that's how Cyclops dealt with the Blob a few issues back, is while he was already moving forward, shot him in the back so he fell into a furnace.
Yeah.
But it also in this issue says not like he's super tough, not like he's like actually invulnerable, like his skin or his muscles are invulnerable, or even his armor. He has a tiny energy field that surrounds him that makes him impervious to harm.
Yeah, it pushes things away from him.
That ends up not being how Juggernaut's powers work after the 1970s.
He is just constantly being charged up, it seems like. He is just, or the aura of Sidorak just constantly pours down upon him. At some points, if he's not using that power, it gets so intense that it starts to push things away from him.
So why didn't Beast just use that Eunice gun on him?
Ooh. Yeah, wait, can Juggernaut smoke a cigarette, or does he just...
I mean, he apparently doesn't need food or water because he was trapped in the Temple of Sidorak for a decade?
ages. I guess that's where Professor X last saw him, right? And that was the Korean War. It's currently 1965 ish.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
I want to talk about a couple other things. I was thrilled with the cameos that we got. Aside from Johnny Storm, who, is a classic character, we get the Teen Brigade. First, we just get an airplane. Unless there's a famous Marvel pilot that I don't know about, this is just...
like, just Cyclops. Like, the famous Marvel pilot is Cyclops, so no.
We come across the Teen Brigade, which is so exciting to me. I think the Teen Brigade is the funniest possible concept in Marvel Comics. Just a bunch of teenagers that sit around listening for danger on the radio, and then they have a direct line to call the Avengers when they find out about that danger.
I did not know that.
Founded and led, of course, by Rick Jones, who is... you could argue responsible for founding the Avengers through his Teen Brigade. This is how they decided to all come together.
I mean, he's also the person who's responsible for the existence of the Hulk, right?
Bruce Banner saved him in the accident that ended up turning him into the Hulk, and also he, in the early days of the Hulk, he has a very close bond with the Hulk, and even at one point, I think, controls him mentally, but basically friend of the Hulk until, it's very funny, the Hulk makes a few decisions and Rick Jones is like, maybe I should distance myself from this guy. I'm more of an Avenger.
I'm gonna get canceled if I stick too close to this guy.
Anyway, a bunch of teenagers that the Avengers depend on receive Professor X's mental message and decide to do nothing about it. They don't think that it's an Avengers issue. And then it reaches Matt Murdock. He's in court. This is very early. This is like everybody knows the Teen Brigade at this point. Matt Murdock is a fairly new character. You would actually probably had to have read a comic to understand that this is Daredevil in court. I guess at some point mentally he says, I would put on my Daredevil costume if I wasn't in court. So it's not hard to figure out. But yeah, it's just, this is sort of like a cross-comic marketing for Daredevil, I think. And that's my guy. Matt Murdock mentioned.
It is a fun little one.
There's a couple of lines that I'm really obsessed with from this issue. Number one, the Professor and Juggernaut are at their final showdown, and Juggernaut says that he's going to destroy the Professor, and the Professor says, you forgot about one thing, my mutant brain. And that's the line. That's his cold killer line. He then just cripples Juggernaut.
Do you think that's going to be his catchphrase from here on out? When Professor X shows up, he yells, you forgot about one thing, my mutant brain.
It's the last thing Juggernaut hears. The other line that I absolutely love is Beast calling himself my favorite X-Man. He says there's a 5-ton steel cylinder rolling at him. He's not sure he can get out of the way in time. So he says, uh-oh, could this be the end for my favorite X-Man?
Pretty good, Beast.
And I think that is it. I think that takes us pretty cleanly into the next issue. Matt, you want to take this one?
Okay, issue 14. Among Us Stalk the Sentinels. It's Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Jay Gavin. A new inker, a new letterer, but same big three. We open on the X-Men. They're in like a combination of testing and recovery, right? Like they are testing their powers after recovering from their injuries, from their battle with the Juggernaut. Iceman's in a giant block of ice. Cyclops has some weird space helmet on that they never explain. Angel's flying up in the air with like a weird harness that it's really hard to tell what's going on here. But anyway, they have, based on their good work against Juggernaut, they've earned a vacation, and they all get excited about this. In preparation for their vacation, we get to see, interestingly, them all kind of prepare their civilian identities, and the various ways that they hide their mutant abilities from the world. And then we see a bit of a romantic rivalry between Scott and Warren for the affections of Jean Grey, as Warren and Marvel Girl take off, and Bobby and Hank, best friends till the end, head into the city, and Scott decides to take his vacation all alone. In the meantime, an anthropologist named Bolivar Trask has been hyping up this mutant hysteria. This is your classic mutants are the walking among us, and they need to be hunted down because they're dangerous. And we see the first actual mention of the Mutant Menace.
Mutant Menace!
On the front of the Daily Globe, which ends up in Professor X's hands, and it has a bunch of like artists' renditions of what the world would look like if we were all mutant slaves. So Professor X gives whatever, the president of TV a call and says, I want to debate Bolivar Trask on TV. TV says, okay. And they have their debate. We also get like a cut to a bunch of just civilians watching this debate and arguing with each other about whether mutants are cool or dangerous. In the middle of the debate, Bolivar Trask has his giant mutant hunting robots that he invented appear on stage, and he demonstrates that they are the solution to the Mutant Menace. These guys will do anything he says, including hunt down all mutants. So he tells them, I need you to hunt down all mutants, and they say, hey, fuck you, you can't tell us what to do, and they zap him. He apparently, as Professor X tells us, he's an anthropologist. He's not a roboticist. He has no idea what he's doing when it comes to programming Sentinels. So they attack him and then flee with his unconscious body. In the meantime of this, we got Bobby and Hank. They're back at the Coffee A Go-Go watching Bernard read poetry and a dude play bongos and a lady dance. They get Professor X's summons and they dip, which makes Bobby's potential girlfriend Zelda really mad. Warren Worthington leaves in the middle of a dinner with his parents, and they all arrive roughly at the same time to the TV studio where they start fighting the Sentinel. They realize he's super tough. Scott is a little bit later. He first needs to blast a hole through the roof of a taxi cab. Not exactly sure why. Oh, he drops his glasses. He drops his glasses and shoots a hole through the roof of a taxi cab, then gets out, runs to the TV station. They continue fighting the Sentinel until it just suddenly seems to have, it clutches its chest and falls over as if it had a heart attack. Nobody knows why. So Angel starts trying to chase down the Sentinels that took Bolivar Trask, and he's getting his ass kicked when he gets seemingly magnetically pulled to the top of a train. Turns out it was Marvel Girl who was trying to save him from getting his ass just totally beat. She's on the train, and she joins Angel. They head back to meet up with Professor Xavier and start planning on how they're gonna defeat these Sentinels. Cut to the Sentinels arriving back at their secret base with Bolivar Trask, and it turns out they want to use him to make more Sentinels. The X-Men arrive on the scene of where they think that the Sentinels disappeared to, but there's nothing there. There's just like a grassy little hill. Or is it the grassy hill raises up and a bunch of lasers shoot out from beneath it, and we get a to be continued?
Oh, Matt.
Yeah.
So much going on here.
Like, why does an anthropologist build mutant hunting robots?
No. I think that actually makes sense. He is an absolute fanatic.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot to talk about as far as parallels to things happening in society at the time with the Mutant Menace thing, but I want to talk about some silly stuff first. You mentioned it, but what the hell is Cyclops' physical therapy? They justify everyone else's. Warren is wearing a harness so that he can like properly stretch his wings back to their full strength as he tries to fly around. Hank's
I
on
guess
crutches
that makes
until
sense.
his foot heals.
Okay.
Cyclops is wearing like an old-timey scuba diver helmet and just sitting in a chair. It's hooked up
Smiling.
to a giant machine, and yeah, he is smiling. And I
I'm
don't
so happy
remember.
about this.
I think he just had like a mild concussion, but the best I can tell, they are just gas mask bonging him with the painkillers. I don't know.
Based on his smile, it seems as if he's on drugs.
There's a fun quick mention of Kazar. I don't even remember why, but I just
It's
love
'cause
hearing that guy's name.
Beast says, and so I'll say it here, and I guess I won't. This was possibly going to be my closing line of the episode, but
Oh,
he says,
sorry.
"I feel I could lick my weight in Neanderthals." And Marvel
Yeah.
Girl says, "For your sake, I hope Kazar doesn't hear you."
Brilliant. It's a great comeback.
I really like them getting prepared for like going out in their civilian clothes, because what we have is like we see Cyclops closed, but we see Cyclops eyes for the first time as his visor lifts up and he prepares to put his glasses on. We see Warren Bobby's helping Warren strap his wings flat against his body so they can hide underneath his suit.
That has to be so painful.
Well, that's what Bobby says. It must feel like wearing a
Yeah.
girdle. And he's like, hey, it's better than giving away my identity. And then we see Hank wrapping up his feet and putting on shoes that have a hinge to let his toes breathe. Hard to tell because the hinge always stays closed. So what the fuck?
I can sympathize with this a little bit. I have very wide feet and I have to buy special shoes unless I want to buy shoes that are like a size and a half too large.
Right.
And I thought he was being sensitive about it when he was explaining it. Like, I have to buy special shoes. They're very expensive. And it's almost like I wish I didn't have this problem thing. But then Warren, after sweeping Jean off his feet and riding off, Hank looks at him and says, Warren would be a perfect ladies' man if only he had a pair of feet like mine. He takes incredible pride in his large, freakish feet.
He loves him.
That was a beautiful moment. There's a changing scene with Hank and Bobby where they get Professor X's urgent mental call. They're both in New York City and they jet into an alley to change. Hank says they should be changing inside a phone booth.
Ooh.
Where do you think he picked that up?
Okay, before we get there though, when Professor X, I'm concerned about the ethics of the Daily Globe, because what sort of respectable newspaper, and it seems to be a respectable newspaper because everybody's reading it and it leads to a TV appearance. What sort of respectable newspaper has people just illustrate somebody's vague idea of what could happen based on their own like paranoid thinking?
So cartoonishly too. It looks like a grown-up evil Astro Boy with a whip just commanding humans around.
Yeah, like it'd be like if today somebody's like, what if Russia threat? And then it's like, what if Russia took over the United States? And there's just like a bunch of pictures of Vladimir Putin like smacking people on the head as they shine his shoes. And then there's like this gladiatorial arena that they show. So I can't understand the journalistic value of publishing this.
It's pretty low. Also, that's such a sensationalistic headline. It's just Mutant Menace.
But to our benefit. Also, so man, so much about Bolivar Trask doesn't make sense. How does a anthropologist learn to build a bunch of giant robots? How does he program them with enough artificial intelligence that they can ignore their programming and beat him up and then enslave him? how is he allowed to bring a score of giant robots into the TV studio? And this is something that's never made sense. Why are independent contractors constantly able to create mutant hunting robots without the government's permission?
Matt, this is a science fiction cautionary tale as old as time, right? He develops some form of artificial intelligence that comes to the conclusion that the only way to save mankind is to enslave it, because mankind will eventually destroy itself.
Sure.
That is a storyline that gets echoed over and over again throughout Marvel. I think the idea of a man with resources being able to take over tech companies or tech services that are well out of his level of experience and start ruining the world with it is a very relevant story.
That's without approval of most of the branches of government.
Exactly. Yeah, just unilaterally saying I'm creating my own police force of technologically advanced. They're just robots. They're just very powerful robots.
Yeah.
They are scary. I think. I don't know that it's actually a Kirby design, but a classic Kirby villain design. It is a very eerily human face. You know what a Sentinel looks like, but still, even in their first appearance, a very uncanny valley type humanoid face on a giant 8-foot robot body. It's a really intimidating sight, especially shown. They're first introduced grabbing Professor X and lifting him out of his chair.
Yeah, if you know any of other Kirby's other work, like the New Gods, or especially any of his sci-fi space adventure work, this idea of combining human features and boxy robotic technological features is a thing that he's incredibly good at.
Yeah. And then getting into it, I think there's two parallels that they're trying to draw here with panics at the time, right? There was a big gay panic with the free love movement starting to pick up. And I think this mirrors that pretty well. Someone just saying, hey, they walk among us, they're corrupting us, they are the end point of human existence.
Right.
We need to destroy them before they destroy society. There's also a very strong parallel to how newspapers were interpreting what Malcolm X was saying. It's not at all what Malcolm X was saying, but the interpretation of his message that Black people should be able to defend themselves against oppression was Malcolm X wants Black people to overthrow white people and turn this into a white slavery country.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this was sort of the fear mongering that was happening around Black Americans at the time, was this idea that, and this continued all the way up into, continues today, but it didn't start getting really called out besides, in activist groups, didn't start really getting called out until the 90s or even 2000s, is this idea of using words like predator or criminal or whatever as this dog whistle, right? Saying in poor communities, there are these predators that have no morals, and they'll rob you and stab you for no reason at all. And it's what the implication is, what the image they're trying to build in your head is that Black people are scary.
Yeah.
And we need these policies that just happen to be extremely racially inequitable, because we're just trying to target the super predators, right? And this was a bipartisan issue, right? This was a big Republican, Ronald Reagan was a big proponent of this kind of rhetoric, and then the Clintons and Biden were both proponents of this rhetoric in the 90s. That's an important metaphor they're drawing, but it also displays the weakness of the metaphor, because the thing that makes the predator's argument, or the thug's argument as it would be in the 2000s,
The aughts. On this
uh,
podcast, we say the aughts.
okay, I'm sorry, the aughts. I didn't mean, please don't cancel me for saying the 2000s. I think the thing that makes that rhetoric so dangerous or so ridiculous, I don't. This isn't going to come out as eloquent as I wanted to, but is that there is no difference, right? There is no difference between a white criminal and a black criminal and a Hispanic criminal and a criminal of any race or nationality, right? But with the mutants, there is a difference. They are a little scarier. They do. If a mutant decides to become a criminal, it can blast you with its eye beams. Whereas if a black person decides to become a criminal, they are no scarier than a white person who is a criminal.
It's I this is the debate, right? That yeah, mutants have capabilities beyond humans, but at the same time, that's not their fault. If I shoplift, but I happen to be able to shoot flames out of my fingers, should I be locked up in a super prison? Am I in the raft?
Sure, right. But there is an argument. There's an argument for that. That is not just is racist in the world of Marvel comics where these things exist. But it also is reasonable to have that discussion, to say, well, how do we deal with criminals that can burn their way through the bars when we put them in jail? That is not reasonable when we talk about that perception that somehow some people of certain races are more dangerous than other people, is why black people get sent to solitary confinement so more often than white white inmates,
or get a longer sentence for the same crime.
Exactly. So, and I think that is a weakness in the mutant metaphor.
It's also, we should mention, done pretty clunkily here. It is 5 total panels. We are extrapolating a bit here.
We're extrapolating because we know what it becomes. Yeah.
And we said we would talk about this stuff because we frankly would talk about this stuff even if it wasn't on a podcast. This is fascinating. It's fun to watch them try, and it's fun to see, like, this is the mid 60s, so they're gonna get it wrong. They're trying their best, but they are gonna get it so wrong. And this is actually, I don't want to keep going on about this, but the one other point that I want to make about vulnerability here is his point that this is the end of the human race, which is an irrational point. There's no evidence to suggest that. It is just a different evolutionary branch. But that is the type of propaganda that, like...
That is, it's similar to the current, like, the great replacement theory sort of thing. Like, oh, well, if you don't care about... It's pithy and emotional enough to seem sensible as a flyby argument.
Yeah. What they do understand here is the function behind the propaganda that goes out. And they explain that, I think, really well and really concisely in this one page.
Right. So why don't if we have more to say about this, it's going to come up because we're still going to be talking about the Sentinels. We're still going to be talking about Bolivar Trask, the worst anthropologist in the history of the world. In the next issue 15, why don't you tell us about it, Pat?
Oh, wait, before we move on to issue 15, there is one more thing I want to mention about this issue.
Okay.
Warren is rich. That man, we already knew he was rich, but like when we get to see his home life and his parents, who just are extremely loving and supportive and live in this huge mansion where they pamper him with he's that you don't run out of money type of rich. It's really put on display here.
I mean, and that will come to bear for 50, 60, I guess, years of the X-Men, because Warren stays rich, even though we never see him work. We never see him. I guess every now and then we see him at a board meeting or something, but often we see him at a board meeting when he's deciding to do something stupid with his money and everyone's mad at him. He's like, I'm going to give not a stupid things with his money, but financially unsound things with his money. Like, oh, I'm going to give $1 billion to this soup kitchen. And then they're like, you can't do that, Mr. Worthington. And then, 10 years later, of him giving $1 billion to soup kitchens, he's still a billionaire. Or the time in the 2000s when he has a bunch of kids run his company.
Oh, I can't wait. I know that's like 6 years from now, but I cannot wait.
6 years of this podcast.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Issue
15, Prisoners of the Mysterious Master Mold.
Ew.
Written by Smilin' Stan Lee, designed by Jolly Jack Kirby, penciled by Jovial J. Gavin, inked by Darlin Dick Ayers, and lettered by adorable Artie Simek. I do want to mention that
It's actually wacky Werner Roth.
Fair enough. I do want to mention that I really appreciate, I meant to mention this last week. Okay, we're going back again to issue 14. Artie Simek.
Oh my goodness.
His lettering is an improvement. I absolutely love when a comic letterer uses bold to point out inflections in a sentence. The way that he uses the bolding of words so that you could deliver a line read. Like you can actually read the line in your head. It is worth looking into. Lettering. Letterers don't get a lot of appreciation, but there are some that do it really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Issue 15, Prisoners of the Mysterious Master Mold. So we open right where we left off in issue 14 on the X-Men stumbling as the ground rises up beneath them. They're dodging the elements and trying to help each other, but none of them really need help. They offer help to each other and get turned down and told to help themselves. The fortress defenses rise out of the ground. The plan is they come up with a plan G, which is to create a glider out of Bobby's ice, have Cyclops blast to propel that glider into the air, and have Warren fly alongside them and steady them. It goes wrong. Bobby and Hank are grabbed by metal tentacles as they fall from this glider. Warren tries to follow them but can't keep up due to the fortress's defenses. Bobby and Hank get captured, placed in a glass cage, and dosed with sleeping glass. Meanwhile, Trask pleads with the Sentinels to listen to him to no avail. He really begins to reflect on his actions. He does not want to create more Sentinels, and he's worried that his actions are going to harm humankind rather than just mutant kind, which is what he wanted. We finally see Master Mold. He is a very large sentinel in a throne with a Pope hat. He is demanding Trask's compliance, or he'll start taking out entire cities. Professor X, on the ground outside, is able to detect mechanical mines behind the laser guns that are shooting out of the ground and sends a mental blast that disables those sentries. The other Sentinels in the room need to find their section leader for permission to take over the guns that these other Sentinels were disabled from, which gives the X-Men their chance to enter. The section leader they're looking for is busy dragging Hank to Master Mold, where they put him under a psycho probe beam that will have him reveal all of his secrets, which means he begins at the beginning by describing his childhood and explaining that his name is Hank. He goes by the Beast. He's a member of the X-Men, which are the protectors of humanity, which shocks Bolivar Trask. He had them pegged wrong the whole time, he realizes, and he really starts to regret his actions. He thought they were here to harm humanity. The X-Men gain entry to the base where a Sentinel finds them and commands them to follow him while he finds his section leader for permission to deal with them. They decide to play along so they can find this section leader and take him out. And then we flash back to Beast's childhood where he's bullied for being agile and oddly shaped. And then we come back to the present where one Sentinel finally finds a section leader while the X-Men ignore the instructions of the other and find an unconscious Bobby as the Sentinel says, "Stop, I didn't tell you to find." They are really weighed down by bureaucracy here. They end up beating up that Sentinel that's chasing them and free Bobby. We flash back again to Hank excelling in athletics, but accidentally revealing too much of his ability by hanging from the goalpost by his feet once he scores a touchdown. The community starts to question his humanity and gives him the nickname Beast. He meets, quote, a very special guest who offers to train him, but he stops short of revealing that it's Professor X or the location of the school that he went to be trained. Of course, the Xavier Academy for gifted children.
Higher learning.
It's
higher learning, gifted children.
Gifted,
it changes, right?
Maybe, but we should know it at this point because I think it's only had one. But in the present, the professor has created a mental projection of himself to find Hank inside and sends sharp thought particles into his mind that will temporarily deaden his own thoughts. The mental image of the professor tries to then probe Master Mold's mind, but is detected and shooed away with electric beams and struggles to make it back to his body on the outside. Meanwhile, the X-Men take out one Sentinel with teamwork, but get hit with a gravity ray and are stuck to the ground. Trask is commanded to create more Sentinels for Master Mold with no hope of being rescued by the X-Men now. To be continued.
All right, so it is called Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters.
Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters.
It eventually becomes Xavier's Institute for Higher Learning. Also becomes later the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. Eventually becomes the Xavier Institute for Mutant Education. At one point, it's called the Xavier School for Gifted Children. It changes its name a lot.
Spoilers.
But I think at this point, it is Professor Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. What sex toy is it that Iceman makes for him and Beast to hold on to and Scott to blast into the...
Yeah.
Is it like a dual butt plug? Like you and your friend sit back to back on this thing?
So, for the listener, this is
It's horrible looking.
This is an ice disc, and towards the, if you pick a side to be the front, two phallic mounds pop out right next to each other that you are meant to wrap your arms and legs around as this thing flies through the air.
Beastie. So, and, okay. So you could say, oh, you're looking too much into it, Matt. Like, you're looking at it through, like, a cynical lens. It's just a little vehicle. But,
No.
First of all, when Beast holds on to it, he says, this doesn't seem very dignified. And second of all, when they launch it, it immediately starts going wobbly. And they're like, this design isn't aerodynamically accurate. So he didn't even need to make this. Like, and this is Plan G. They practiced this.
Plan G for glider, I'm pretty sure.
It's really it's a really unfortunate looking panel.
There's a splash page in the beginning where they refer to the Sentinels as unhuman monsters. It is just a fun little Marvel fact. Very funny that they have to call them unhuman Sentinels because the Fantastic Four just this month introduced the Inhumans, and they don't want to confuse anyone.
No way. Yeah, I bet. So I bet the script said one thing, and then it was like, we got like, and then Artie Simic was like, hey, we got to change that.
I think Stan Lee said it, and then Artie was like, no problem. I just turned the I into a U.
There's also a thing that I don't know why Cyclops doesn't do more, which is he climbs a sheer cliff face. He will shoot a handhold above him and then grab that handhold.
Yeah, he really
and continue to do so.
he loses a lot in this, or not loses. He talks a lot about having to win, and then just doesn't really have much of an impact.
Cyclops does?
Yeah,
You mean he doesn't have an impact throughout the issue? He doesn't do a lot?
right. It's a lot of him thinking about what to do and not
Okay.
actually doing it. He does release an extremely powerful blast to send the ice glider into the air.
And he does free Bobby from his glass prison. Also, there's a lot of glass prisons in this era. I guess because then you can still see the heroes being trapped, but a lot of people are going to be trapped in or impeded by glass in this run of issues.
Well, we're not in the age of plastic yet, so there's really only a few options for materials.
It is very funny that when the whatever psycho probe is put on the beast, that he's like, okay, I'll tell you everything. If you were torturing somebody, which, I know you do, if you were torturing somebody for like state secrets and they were like, okay, I'll tell you everything. My mother birthed me on a stormy night in July. You're like, oh fuck. Okay.
Well, unfortunately, the psycho probe doesn't have the capability to narrow in on a specific memory. It says, "Tell me all your memories." So he does exactly that. Which it makes sense that they cut out a lot of that and just keep cutting back to pertinent parts of his origin story that he's explaining to Master Mold. But there is a point where they cut back and they have to clearly explain, like, okay. Remember a few pages ago, this is Beast talking to Master Mold to explain his whole history. So in order to squeeze that exposition in, they have Master Mold talking to Beast and saying, oh, and then you won a scholarship to college. Please continue your story.
That's so funny. Yeah, that is right before. Yeah, that's very awesome. It's right before Beast does the absolutely natural thing of scoring a touchdown, removing his shoes, and flipping upside down to hang from the field goal.
He just got too excited.
Do you ever get so excited you just fling your shoes off in front of your bros?
Yes, but
okay.
I do it in a very human way. Matt, you've seen me kick so excitedly into the air that my shoe flies off.
Yeah, I mean, me and you did comedy on stage for a long time, and after a good show, you would just fling your shoes off into the crowd. But you then wouldn't.
A lot of kicks.
You wouldn't then like hang upside down from something. You would just plop around the stage in your bare feet.
Believe me, if I could have, I would have.
You were talking about the lettering before we started this issue, and I think there's a really cool example. And actually, I'm not sure in this era, is it the artists or the letterers who do sound effects?
I think if you see it in panel, it's the artist. If you see it in a bubble, it's the letter.
Well, then it's Werner Roth, I guess, who does this, like, he does these sound effects that are like tumbling into each other. They sort of visually represent what's happening. So when the Sentinel crashes through Iceman's ice wall, it says "Bacow," but there's like all the letters are kind of tumbling on top of each other and like leaving shadows. It's very good.
So good.
Yeah. Do you have any other big observations about this issue?
You know what, Matt? I do. I have a few.
Whoa,
Number one, I am sick of this inconsistency. Can the professor or can the professor not affect the damn robot minds?
Yeah, sometimes he can like probe machines and stuff, and other times, nope.
It's too mechanical.
Yeah, in this issue, he does both things happen. He's like, he knocks a bunch of Sentinels out. And then later in the issue, he's like, I can't do anything about Master Mold because he doesn't have a brain.
Yeah, it's annoying. I am dying, though, at the Sentinels being weighed down by bureaucracy. This whole rescue mission works because
Mhm.
the Sentinels need permission from their section leader to do anything, and the section leader is currently busy because the X-Men are attacking the station. It is unbelievably realistic.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Ronald Reagan, right? Like that seems to be the that seems to be the point that Stanley's making is like, oh, isn't all this red tape of government so inefficient?
They deploy a heavy gravity ray, which is sick. One of my, I think it's a thing that comes back to haunt the X-Men in the future too, if I'm correct. But one of my favorite sci-fi concepts is just a ray that increases the gravity of the area it's pointed at to a point where the targets are stuck to the ground. They can't move. Very cool concept.
What do you think philosophically about Bolivar Trask's turning point here? He is like, he's proven wrong about that, mutants are evil and they want to take over humanity when, under a truth ray, Beast is like, we want to save the human race. But a person shouldn't need to want to save the human race to have rights.
Yeah, it's so he's doing a lot of reckoning when he should be doing a lot of realizing. Like, he is about to cause a robo apocalypse, and he's thinking like, this is kind of my fault. So ultimately, I mean, yeah, obviously Bolivar Trask saying, Bolivar Trask is still clouded by his hate for mutants, even though he thinks he's overcome it. Does that make sense? Like, he's the guy that's saying, oh, I'm not racist, I just...
Right. Oh, right. So he's still saying, oh, I thought mutants were dangerous because they wanted to kill humanity, but they want to use their freaky powers that separate them from us to protect us. Maybe they shouldn't all be killed. And rather than saying, oh, they're just like us, it's not their fault that they were born with this extra gene and I shouldn't treat them differently because of it.
Exactly. Which,
Right.
to be fair, is the first step of a recovering bigot.
Right, I guess so. Right, yeah, the way that legitimately there is a strong media studies connection between the premiere of Will and Grace and gay rights.
Wow. Let's just let that sit for a moment. That is embarrassing.
I know. Okay.
One more thing, just one final thing I want to mention about this issue. There is a scene where the X-Men have defeated one Sentinel and a whole fleet of Sentinels enter behind him to take on the X-Men. And Warren, not Bobby, mind you, but Warren says, uh-oh, the Happiness Boys are back.
There's also a fun scene where a Sentinel falls on its face and you see his butt crack. They draw a butt crack on the Sentinel.
They were made with butts.
Yeah. Well, got it.
Thank you, Bolivar Trask.
This is one of the things about inventors in media and stuff, like in sci-fi and superhero stuff, is he had to sit there and craft the bodies, right? Like, he's got to sit,
well,
like,
dude,
as part of his invention, he's got to sit there and mold big plastic or metal butts and be like, yeah, that's what I want this to look like. It's just like watching Iron Man, and he's got this incredibly complex computer system that's, saying these specific things to him and talking to him and whatever. Like, he's had to program all that in. He's had to sit there and, like, graphic design those menus where where there's all that stuff that he pulls apart with his hands, and you're like, oh, that's so cool. A computer doesn't just do that on its own, right? Like, he's got to sit there and draw that in fucking Photoshop and then put it, or Canva, and put it in his app.
Right. He had to invent Paul Bettany's voice.
Right. And so Bolivar Trask had to like sit there and go, oh, I want these guys to have human faces. So let me like hammer on this big sheet of metal until it looks kind of like a face.
And also, I want him to be caked up.
Yeah, I want them big, dummy thick button thighs. All right. Issue 16. The Supreme Sacrifice, in which a life is lost, a battle won. That's Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Jay Gavin, Dick Ayers, and Artie Simek. We open with Professor X on the ground. He is... The last issue, he had his astral form disrupted by microelectric blasts. And he told us, and it was like a cliffhanger, can his astral body get back to his human body in time? Yeah, he does.
The answer was yes, he can.
Yeah. And he comes to consciousness just as that hill fortress retracts within itself. And he's cut off from the X-Men. So he crawls his way. His wheelchair's right there. Maybe it's broken. Maybe he can't maybe he can't turn it upright, but he crawls his way to the I don't know, like we only ever see him being placed in his wheelchair, but I grew up with a sister in a wheelchair. I think he should have been able to climb back into his wheelchair, especially because we know he's a star athlete and super buff, but whatever.
Maybe, I don't want to get too mired down in it as during the recap, but maybe he just couldn't move his wheelchair without assistance. Like he could get into it and then he's just sitting up on that hill.
Yeah, but then he could. Why wouldn't he just turn the wheels? Oh, and maybe there's like mud and his wheels get stuck.
So, yeah, they're on grassy terrain. It would be.
Yeah.
Sorry. Please resume your recap.
No, I think that's a very good point, and I'm glad you made it. Okay, so he crawls his way to the road where some dudes, grab him, and he's like, no time to explain. You must drive me to the city. So meanwhile, the X-Men are trapped in a gravity globe, which increases gravity on them. They have trouble, like Cyclops can't blast out. Marvel Girl is exhausting herself trying to lift herself up against it. Iceman tries to build a bigger and bigger ice pillar until it shatters the thing, but his ice a heavy glass dome is probably stronger than a pillar of ice. So Cyclops develops a plan, and he has them stop resisting because he's got a plan for the next time they have an opening. Meanwhile, Master Mold's like, all right, I'm done with this beast guy. I've heard his whole life story. Take him away, and we'll kill them all when we get a chance. He disintegrates a little machine just to show Bolivar Trask what he could do to a city. And Bolivar Trask is like, oh no, I guess I will help you make more Sentinels. Meantime, Professor X makes it back to the TV studio where the police are examining the Sentinel, trying to figure out what the hell happened. And Professor Xavier starts using his mind to probe it, and the police get confused because they let him onto a crime scene to just sit in a chair and stare really, really hard at a robot. And they're about to kick him out when he's like, I got it. There's a crystal factory next door, and it's the crystal that disrupted him. We've got to bring the crystal to Master Mold. So we cut back to the X-Men, who in their gravity crystal, just before the Sentinels are like, they're opening the globe to put Beast back in, and the moment they do, Cyclops zaps one in the head. They all get out. They start trashing all the machinery. They start shooting their ice beams and making the Sentinels slip all over the floor. And just as they're about to escape, they get hit with a stun ray, and they all fall over.
Oof.
So, oh no, they're about to all die. And then the Sentinels all fall over, so everyone's fallen over. Cut back outside, 3 helicopters are dragging a giant crystal through the sky towards the fortress. That's what made the Sentinels all fall over. The X-Men rally, they get up, they charge Master Mold, but I don't think... Are they charging Master Mold, or are they just trying to escape?
No, they're charging Master Mold. They say, all right, it's time.
Master Mold is in the meantime making more Sentinels with the help of Bolivar Trask, who finally his conscience becomes too much to bear, and he starts beating his machine with a wrench and trying to smash it. It explodes right as the X-Men are getting there to beat up Master Mold. The room explodes, so they're completely ineffectual in this issue. All they do is get hurt and flee. They narrowly escape the collapsing fortress, where there's like a little, another one of these. Oh, here's a specific obstacle for each person's specific power situation. Iceman gets real fucked up. Because of the earlier explosion, the heat was too bad and it made him pass out. So the X-Men escape, passing Iceman from one person to the next as they get out of this fortress, and then it explodes behind them, leaving Bolivar Trask dead on the body of Master Mold. Right before we finish the issue, we see an ominous shadow cast over the Xavier mansion.
A shadow of menace, Matt.
Oh, sorry, an ominous shadow, and it is a shadow of menace.
Matt.
Yeah.
Matt.
Yes, yes.
Another beautiful issue. This is really... Can I mention a few things up top that I think just really level up the X-Men storytelling here? Number one, another beautiful splash page.
Why ask if you didn't want my answer?
Oh, sorry. Can I? Please?
I was going to say
yes,
no, but now hearing... I was going to say no, but now hearing your enthusiasm, I think, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Number one, we've actually seen this before. This isn't a level up, but there is a beautiful splash page at the top. It is just a big Sentinel head in the center with the X-Men splayed out and in distress in a circle around it. They're all in like poses of pain or unconscious.
Except for Angel, who looks like he's posing for a nude magazine. I mean, he's fully clothed. But...
Yeah, sure. But what I was really impressed by was the 3-panel recap at the very beginning. We left the last issue, Professor Xavier struggling to get back to his body, the X-Men trapped inside, Trask not sure what he was going to do, but looking like he was going to create an army of Sentinels. We are unsure what's going to happen. So in the past, what the X-Men would have done is this long, rambling exposition, maybe a few characters just explaining the plot beats of the past. But they do this in the first 3 panels perfectly. Panel 1, I'm Professor X. Look at me. I made it back to my body. Panel 2, the X-Men are still trapped inside. Here's what they were doing in last issue. Here's where we left off in case you don't remember. Panel 3, oh yeah, here's the X-Men's whole deal if you're not familiar. And then they launch into story. Like it is a perfect way just to bring you in, even if this is the first issue of X-Men you're ever picking up, and it's the end of a 3-parter. It's just a really great example of comic storytelling that they were still developing at the time, right? This is an issue where they really employ like page reveals pretty well. It's really broken down into... In the past, it's been sloppy with the big panel that reveals the information just being in the middle of a page somewhere, rather than turning the page in an issue like this and seeing what the next big thing they have to deal with is, or taking you to the next scene when you turn the page.
Right, like at the moment when the Sentinels all collapse, you have no idea why. We have no idea why. They just defeated the X-Men. You're like, oh, this is the part where the X-Men fail their escape attempt. and then all the Sentinels fall over, and you're like, what the fuck? It's like a mini cliffhanger, and then cut to the next page. 3 helicopters heroically dragging a giant crystal through the air.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, let's talk about that crystal.
I don't know how we will. It doesn't. There's nothing about it that makes sense.
Okay. We're talking about like the 50s was the sort of modernization of cities, right? That's when, well, I guess maybe the 30s and 40s are when
But the 50s was the nuclear era.
it was, yeah.
Everyone got electricity. Everybody was all these modern conveniences were becoming more affordable. People were getting air conditioners and washers and dryers, like all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. And there's like this Art Deco takeover in the 60s and 70s, even in the 50s maybe, where the buildings that they're building have these sort of, I'm going to get the architectural terms incorrect, but they've got sort of this like bleak look to them with these big fancy features about them. So
is that brutalist?
How's that for architectural terms? So I think the idea of someone building what we see is a factory, and then it's just got a steeple coming off the top that is empty in the middle. It's like a big frame that holds a giant crystal. Is that a thing they did?
No, of course not. Patrick, there's no way.
I know they got some weird buildings in New York.
Only in New York, man.
Also, just the concept of a crystal.
There's another brilliant piece of art here, though, where they first introduce Bolivar Trask again. Well, we see him from afar in the panels before it, and he's complaining about what's happening. And then we see him up close, and he looks so bedraggled. His suit is rumpled. His hair is coming out of his slicked back do, and he's mentally sort of thinking about how bad he fucked up. It's really, really expressive art.
It's another great example of just like the storytelling here leveling up.
Yeah.
Another very unintentionally funny thing is the police. Professor X arrives back at the TV studio. The police are just scratching their heads about a giant robot. They don't know what to do. There's so many of them. This makes sense. This is very realistic. Just a ton of cops standing around scratching their butts. Professor X shows up and they're like, oh yeah, I heard you're some kind of genius. You should be here on this active crime scene checking this out. So he does, and then they immediately start complaining. Like, yes, he is just sitting there staring intensely at a deactivated robot, but they are really getting on his case. Like, hey, mister, I brought you in here to work, not to sit around and stare at things.
If you're just going to stare at stuff, just go do it somewhere else.
And then I think the cherry on top of this police story is the helicopters are being piloted by those same police. Professor X was like, Inspector, gather your best men and 3 helicopters and go confiscate the crystal off of that building. And it is the exact same set of police still expressing their skepticism to him on these helicopters. These are
that they agreed, that they said yes to it is hard to fathom.
And also just that they can stop what they're doing to go join a helicopter mission into the woods.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to mention? I have one more thing that I think is very cool about this, but
no, besides some of the stuff that I already pointed out was ridiculous or cool, I didn't have a lot. This is just kind of a cool ending to the issue, and except for, I guess it is funny how ineffectual the X-Men are here, right?
They're just like, oh, I guess we'll never know who blew up the master mold for us.
They can't break out of the globe, and then eventually they do immediately get knocked out. It's by no efforts of their own. The Sentinels fall over and they get free. They go to fight Master Mold. Somebody else has beaten them by the time they get there. And then they just run away. They've done nothing this issue.
They're very good at saving themselves. Beast makes a very good point that they would actually make splendid firemen. Could
Yeah.
be a route for them if they continue to just run into this sort of luck.
And then there's the tragic end of Bolivar Trask.
Yeah, he's dead.
Yeah.
So is Master Mold. Neither of them will ever return.
What was your last
The one,
mhm.
This is an extreme Stan Leeism, but for all the deliberating that we did earlier about societal politics, I think this wraps their moral up really nicely. He says, "Beware the fanatic. Too often his cure is deadlier by far than the evil he denounces."
That actually is, yeah, that's really good. If that's the only moral that he intended to convey through here, yeah, fucking nailed it, dude.
Yeah.
If you didn't mean
Great
any
job.
sort of social metaphor here, and all you were trying to do was say, don't be a fanatic or you might be dangerous, fine, yeah, you did it. Hell, I can't complain about this if that's all you meant to do. I don't think that's all you meant to do, dude. But hey.
No. There's some very clear parallels along the way. But if you are going to extract a message that anyone can understand out of this, it is, and I mean, the fanatics, they're fanatics, you know? Not all of them. Some of them aren't. How's that for an insightful point?
Yeah. Clip that. Share that with your local philosophy group. All right. Do we want to get to our last issue?
I really, really badly want to get to our next and final for this episode issue.
I thought you were going to say no. I thought you were going to say nope and then hang up the call. You've surprised me.
Don't pull back the curtain, Matt. We record in a room together that's attached to the house that we live in together.
Okay.
I wouldn't hang up a call.
Issue 17.
Okay, issue 17. ... And none shall survive. Story by Stan Lee, layouts by Jack Kirby, pencils by Jay Gavin, inks by Dick Ayers, and lettering by A. Simek. We open on the army and a first aid team showing up to clean up after the X-Men's big fight with Master Mold. Iceman and the Beast are taken to the hospital. Iceman's condition appears to be critical, and Professor X seems to feel guilt, maybe for the first time, about their condition. He does beg them not to reveal their identities as they go into the hospital, urging an unconscious Iceman somehow to not let go of his ice form and reveal who he actually is.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Angel calls the school and finds out that his parents are on their way for a surprise visit via their phone messaging review service because he hasn't been in contact for a few days. All of a sudden, he just left and hasn't been in touch. Professor X sends Angel home to catch them because he senses danger. There's some sort of dread he has about the mansion that he didn't mention, that he just, well, I guess he's mentioning now. Angel gets to the mansion. The door is already open. They usually lock it. Angel goes in and a battle axe flies from a decorative set of armor, almost kills him. There is a voice taunting him, making him run through, or I guess fly through the mansion, where he runs into a pane of glass placed in the middle of the hallway, which knocks him out. There's a doctor trying to give Cyclops an eye exam, so he objects and leaves, and he and Professor X drive home because Professor X has lost his mental contact with Angel, feels it's very unusual. They get to the mansion. Cerebro is going nuts. It's like a haunted house story. Its wires rise up behind Professor X, wrap around him, and zap him. And then there's another transparent shield that raises between them that projects Cyclops' eye beams back on him. Building goes dark. All of a sudden, the lights go out, and someone beats up Scott, just starts punching him from every angle in the dark. Beast shows us that he is healed. He no longer needs the hospital. He starts bouncing around. He and Marvel Girl go and check in on Iceman, who is in a coma, might die. He's they keep it's like watching a TikTok story. They don't want to say death or die or kill. They just keep avoiding the word. Anyway, trusting the doctor that they are leaving him with, they decide to run home. As soon as they get there, Beast's idea is to run in first at full speed, just in case there are any attackers waiting to protect Jean. The hallway, unfortunately, is coated in a slick surface, a fully frictionless surface, which means Beast can't use his agile, tactile fingers and toes to grip onto anything, and he just goes sliding. A door opens up and he gets thrown into a secret room. Marvel Girl finally sees the intruder. She recognizes him, tries to use her telekinesis to push the intruder out, but her powers aren't working because she's being dosed with a invisible sleeping gas, which is weakening her powers, and eventually she passes out. Meanwhile, at the hospital, there are some reporters harassing the doctor, trying to find out Iceman's identity. The doctor kicks them out. We know that we can trust this guy. The intruder puts all the X-Men into a steel gondola attached to a balloon and sends them up into low orbit where they will slowly run out of air. The perfect way to kill someone. And then Warren's parents do show up. They knock on the door. A purple glove reaches out, twists the knob, pulls the door open, and who is on the other side but Magneto?
Me. Oh, no. It was Magneto. Sorry.
No, it was Magneto. To be continued.
Yeah, that's a pretty good cliffhanger. We thought Magneto was dead. Like, last we saw Magneto, he had been taken to space by this stranger to never return, the stranger said. But here he is. Their arch foe back again and in their house. And apparently, like Kevin McAllister, spent a lot of time setting up a bunch of traps around the mansion for them to fall into.
The pane of glass one is the one that gets me. That is just
the amount of time he would have had to stand there polishing that pane of glass so that Angel couldn't see.
And like everything else is his powers, right? The cords of Cerebro rising up and wrapping around the professor, an invisible force field appearing that Scott can't break out of, even the control of the electronics, like the manipulating the surface of the walls and floor of the mansion to be fully smooth metal. That's reasonably within his power set.
I don't think that he's doing it with his powers, though. I think he set these things up. Like, they make it look physical. They make the barrier between Cyclops and Professor X look like another pane of glass. They make the hallway that Beast slips down look like a hallway covered in glass, right? Like, and again, he has
maybe it's
sleeping gas
all
dispensers.
Glass stuff now.
He just loves glass.
Maybe he doesn't have his powers.
I don't know. I guess we'll find out next issue. But
what if he's Glass Nido now?
I think he would have said, I am power. Men call me Glass Nido. Why? This is the X-Men have not done this Batman villain ass thing where it's like, oh, I'll put you in a slow trap to die. Until now, why doesn't he just kill them? You just take a knife, stab them to death.
Everybody gets one. If they haven't done it yet, they're entitled to do it here.
Oh, okay.
It is, I think, more absurd, and we laughed about this while explaining it, but he puts them in a steel ball and attaches it to a hot air balloon.
Yeah.
And just has them floating away.
A steel ball with 5 bodies in it. How big would that balloon have to be?
That's got to be like 500-600 pounds, and he's got a pretty big balloon.
Yeah, I guess so.
Also, that is not a gondola. He calls it a gondola. It is just a big metal ball.
Yeah.
Gondola suggests some sort of luxury, you know?
Here's something I love. I love how Professor X is like, do not reveal your secret identities. Make sure you don't reveal your secret identities. And then he goes into Beast's room and he's like, oh, hi, McCoy. Like, he just starts calling, he uses his last name immediately. I also love when Angel's on the phone with his parents. He's just flying in circles around the hospital waiting room with the phone at the
my God,
end of its cord so that they can't see what number he dialed.
And the nurses are all jumping up at him, trying to grab him, saying, "You can't do that. This is against policy."
Stop, sir, stop it. He's just flying around in circles.
It's also, remembering...
That's the real Mutant Menace.
The mutant Dennis the Menace. There's also, so what he's doing in that scene is, and remember, it's officially 1966. I looked. This is a technology no one's ever heard of, which is calling home to electronically check your messages. This is maybe the dawn of the answering machine. I don't. Jamie, can you look that up for us? This is another one of their gadgets, and they nail this one. This is a future technology that comes to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have two fucking millionaires living together. Right? They're gonna have the most updated technology. I mean, this could even be right before answering machines were invented, and Professor X just invented it because he invents shit all the time. Hey, why are they trying to give Scott an eye exam?
What? His injury is once again pretty unclear to me. I can only assume it's a concussion. I don't know why, but I just imagine Scott always having a concussion.
Well, I mean, as we'll find out one day, that is his origin. But
oh my God,
he's just concussion prone now. The scene where Magneto beats up Cyclops in the dark is a pretty cool one. It's that sort of black and white, but with the white colored in as blue, like black and blue, except for when Cyclops is shooting his beams and then the room is lit up red in the panel. And I don't know, it's just cool. And like, it seems obvious, but things aren't always that thoughtful in this era of comics. So it was a really cool scene.
Okay, so I'm learning, I agree with what you just said, Matt, but I'm learning that the answering machine was invented in 1935. So it first gained popularity with Orthodox Jews at that time because they weren't allowed to answer the phone on the Sabbath.
Whoa.
I'm scanning headlines and article summaries. I'm not actually reading as we go.
Well, the other thing is that Iceman is literally dying, and Professor X won't let him ice down. Like, that might save his life, dude.
Yeah, the doctor does keep saying, like, I don't think you understand me. I don't know how this ice body works.
Yeah.
And the professor just keeps going, well, figure it out.
In the first panel, somebody's taking Iceman's pulse and says, "Your pulse is impossible, son," which is a very good line. And I love the final panel with Magneto because it really speaks to what you say, which Magneto always has the craziest eyes in this era. He just looks insane from the way they draw his face.
Magneto's got his crazy eyes back. This is, I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just the shading, but one eye is much bigger than the other.
Whatever it is, it's very effective.
Or the whites of the eyes, at least.
He looks unhinged.
Fucking menacing.
Yeah. It's a good Magneto.
What an iconic costume, too. It is just, it's unchanging, and it doesn't need to. Even the little skirt.
So how do you feel about this run of issues?
Intense. They're really, so we've talked about like what the other runs we've read through represent in just the evolution of the production of the X-Men, and this really focuses on storytelling and how to make the X-Men compelling. It really focuses on their teamwork too. There's a lot of focus on making sure the moves that they execute are involving as many team members as as is feasible to pull off whatever they're trying to pull off. They are extremely disrespectful to Bobby, and they should be, because he says a ton of corny shit. Like, he calls his snowballs forget-me-nots. But they call him son, sonny, they call him boy, they call him kiddo. Even when Scott is acknowledging that, like, hey, you're one of us, you're a man, you're not a child anymore, he calls him boy.
Right. I think, I mean, this is very cool. It's the introduction of Juggernaut. It is the introduction of the Sentinels. It brings in this overarching theme of the X-Men, them trying to protect humanity, even as humanity's trying to destroy them. Yeah, and then bringing back their arch foe, just as they thought they had tried. Like, actually, in their, I would say just as they thought they were trying, but in their lowest moment, one of their members might be dying.
Yeah, and they're barely recovered from their previous lowest moment.
It's almost like this might have been the beginning of what inspired Chris Claremont, right? Because later, Chris Claremont, he's known for just these cascading, overlapping plots that never let up. And that's how this run of issues feels. It is just not letting up. They don't get a second. They're recovering from Juggernaut when the Sentinels appear. They're recovering from the Sentinels when Magneto appears. It's so good.
Well, here's I agree wholeheartedly. I think these are exciting, fast-paced, and really easy to chew through. Here's what I'm missing, though, is the lifestyle stuff. I love just watching the X-Men hang out and goof with each other. There's so little of that here because they're in these long, painful stories. Painful to them, not painful to read.
There was that little bit at the beginning where they were on vacation and they were watching Bernard in the coffee, but that was about it. Like, that was it. It was just a couple panels. Is there any Pat's Deals and Steals this week?
Oh my God, are there steals and deals? So I'm going to mention my honorable mention first, because this was it until I saw the main one. There are frequently pages that have, 20 to 40, 50 ads on them, little block ads, like a classifieds page. And one of them, there's very little detail, but if you send them 50 cents, they will send you a list of 1,001 things that you can get for free. It sounds like a blast, a gamble. I am trying to figure out if it is like a list of services that they know that you can attain for free, or if it's like, here's how to go to Friendly's and tell them it's your birthday.
Right, or like
list of you can get for free.
You can get ketchup packets at McDonald's. You can get sugar packets at was there a coffee chain at the time? At Coffee A Go Go.
Yeah, there you go. So conversion from 1965, 66. 50 cents is about $4.90 today. So under $5, you can get 1,001 things you can get for free.
So it'd be like buying one of those cheap books with the guy with the exclamation points all over his suit, where he's like, these government programs will give you this stuff for free. Like, I'd pay, like, not I wouldn't, but somebody could conceivably pay $4.50 for a book that says that. A book of that guy's book.
That guy sells those for like $20, those books.
Ooh.
And he has to wear that dumb question mark suit. But, Matt, this is not my primary steals and deals. My best steals and deals we have is actually Marvel specific this week. We have a terrific set of 3 items that you can get regardless of if you're a member of the Merry Marvel Marching Society or not. But if you are a member of the Merry Marvel Marching Society, remember, it costs $1, comes with a bunch of free stuff.
Yeah.
There is also a mysterious free gift that gets included with each order. I don't know what that free gift was, but the actual items they're selling, for $1, so about $10, maybe $9 in today's money.
Yeah.
you get this set of swinging superhero stationery, complete with its own now famous nifty nutty portfolio. It's just the thing for writing letters to the White House, Buckingham Palace, and even Brand X. It's a blast. They want you to write to DC on Marvel
That's
stationery.
very petty. I really, really love that.
Number 2, for $1.50, you can get the greatest fashion sensation since Lady Godiva. Colorful, crazy, and coming on strong. Welcome to the Marvel age of t-shirts. There's a few ads for these, and they keep hyping up the age of t-shirts. But this is a t-shirt with... Yeah.
That t-shirt looks incredible. Yeah, describe it.
Yeah. This is a t-shirt, orange circle within this orange circle, but slightly popping out of it as if they're coming out of the shirt at you. Are the X-Men, and then Professor X's bald-ass head right at the top. These are Kirby drawings. They're all in really cool poses. It is a sick sweatshirt that is $1.50 while supplies last. There's also a picture of Juggernaut saying, "Face front." I can't read the rest. You're on your honor not to wear it while reading Brand X.
Ooh,
so this one cuts at them as well. Mm-hmm. And then finally, for $1.99, you can have a giant 6-foot-high pinup, big as life and living color of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Others in preparation, so there are more to come in the future. But a 6-foot poster of Spider-Man, they say, great for decorating your Merry Marvel Marching Society clubhouse, college dorm, or for breaking your lease with. Interesting.
That's very good.
So we're saying $1 plus $1.50 brings us to $2.50 plus $1.99 brings us to $4.49 in 1966. This can all be yours. All adds up to about $40, but you get more. I think it's the stationery that's overpriced, right? The t-shirt what comes out to about $14-15. That's a fair price for a t-shirt. It is the age of t-shirts.
So like half a day working at minimum wage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To get all this stuff, you put in a half day's work. The stationery comes out to about $10 though, and I don't think that's
let's just leave that off. Let's just get the t-shirt and maybe the giant Spider-Man. And then it's only $30. Well, that's a pretty good deal and a pretty good steal. Thank you, Pat, for your reporting.
Oh my God, Matt.
Whoa, yes.
One more thing. I'm sorry, unrelated to steals and deals. I am breaking the segment because I forgot to mention all the way back in issue, I want to say 16.
Okay.
You know what else happened this same month?
1966, March? Okay, yeah, no, of course I know. I know that Operation Jericho, the Mizo National Front uprising, began in the Assam state of India when insurgents made simultaneous attacks on government installations at Aizawl, Lunglai, Champai. I don't know how to pronounce these, and I'm making an idiot of myself. So yeah, I know that.
No, you're right. It was a scary time, but
I know what you're referring to. Dave Pilkey, who made the Captain Underpants books, was born.
Yes, it was a scary time, but that is not what I'm talking about.
What?
Spider-Man, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, crushed by a giant machine.
Oh, the famous
iconic
issue. Yeah.
Sequence where, a giant piece of machinery and half a building falls on top of him, and he has to summon his strength and think about all of his loved ones to lift himself up from under this giant rubble and get out to save the day.
Holy cow.
Iconic stuff.
Well, that's a great deal in steel, Pat, and thanks for that. And people at home can get their wallets together to go trap Spider-Man under a building. Guys, thank you so much for listening to Mutant Menace. You can email us at mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. You can find me anywhere on the internet at Matt Aucamp, AUKAMP, mostly on Blue Sky. You can find Pat arguing with people on social media as Pat Reber.
Sometimes as Pat Reber. Sometimes as Professor Tom Shakespeare.
I do another podcast called Save Your Game. Check that out wherever you get podcasts like this one. In addition, you can find us, I think by now we should have an Instagram up.
Why, yes, Matt. It's at Mutant Menace Pod. That's right. And please email us about literally anything you want. We just love contact. So mutantmenacepod@gmail.com. Anytime. Send us a calendar invite.
We want to thank Krills Wilson for our intro and outro music. And be back next week where we will discuss issues 18 through 22. And as we say at the end of every single episode, cool it, chick, you're melting my bongos.
And as always, my brain has been fortified to the maximum degree.